it's what, it's that one of, you have revenues, coming for both that are, that are different, so, so the choice student, if it's a regular ed student, is a $5,000 piece, and it's one of those things that, I've been looking back at, at a particular grade level and saying, okay, if we have, if we're taking in 10 choice students, but having to add a teacher, that's $50,000 that you're bringing in, but you've got a teacher plus a benefits package. And so those are things that we're we're going to look at and need to weigh, and I think it's a bigger, for me it's also a bigger thing to look at. I think we need to start looking at the elementary schools and potentially, I'd argue, even look at aspects of the regional agreement that tie our hands in certain ways that don't let us balance out some of the, when Sam says I've got no additional space, well, there's space in Chatham, but there's also parts of the regional agreement that says that we can't, Harwich kids go to Harwich and Chatham kids go to Chatham. So it's a bigger, complex thing.
That thought process, though, if sometime you could share it, at least in a simplistic way, would be incredibly helpful in terms of seeing how decisions are made and that there is an economic basis to those decisions. It would help.
Brian, Lou, something you might want to keep track of from year to year is in terms of the actual net cost, is the increase in choice in, well, whether it's an increase or a decrease, the flow of in versus the flow of out. Because obviously, if we have a classroom that'll hold 25 students, and we bring in, and we have 22 Harvard students, and we bring in 3 from Dennis, there's no additional cost to teach those 3 students because there's space available, but of course they bring $15,000 with them. You want to really compare the success from the standpoint that you're approaching. You want to keep track of how many are coming in and bringing 5,000 versus how many are going out and taking 5,000 with them.
It comes down. I think those are those trade-offs, and one of the conversations that we had back in the spring was an AP program that we put in place, and we got a senior that was from Harwich, living in Harwich, had been at Sturgis, decided to come back here because of the AP program that we put in place. With that student comes $15,000, which more than pays for about 3 AP sections of of teaching time. It's a complex puzzle there, and I think I think maybe what you're looking for is what's the incremental cost of adding that next child, because that's I think what Brian was saying is the next student isn't going to cost. They cost something, but what is that incremental cost for adding the next student? And then you have to weigh that against what's the educational cost of adding that next student. So, for instance, if you were to look at the Harwich Elementary School numbers, ever since I got here, I very deliberately told Sam to put the brakes on a pattern of having class sizes of 22 and 23 at the elementary level, because I didn't feel that was educationally the sound way to go. Now, we could go and open the doors. We had applications to go to Harwich Elementary School, but that would have us taking in students and having first and second grade be 22, 23, not 18, 19. And again, it's choices and decisions that you have to make.
I really understand complex, and what I love is you just put a formula together that handles all those complexities. The real, from a philosophical perspective, which is easy to deal with, my personal belief, and I'll use personals not to offend anyone, is that the school is there to educate Harwich and Chatham students. Anyone else that's brought in should be icing on the cake, should not be eating the cake. So that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but the numbers should reflect that.
Well, we have a perfect segue into our next topic, subcommittee reports on finance.
Left.
I'm looking forward to someone on the finance committee to give an update, starting with my superintendent.
Well, I could quickly mention the three general topics that we spoke about. First were building and field and facilities usage fees. The second topic that I briefly brought up is solar power with the Cape and Vineyards Electric Cooperative, where we had last year we had engaged in a net metering credit deal with them that would essentially reduce our electric bill by roughly 13% for the next 20 years. They've contacted us to say that they can give us a little bit more net metering credits. We had asked for about 2 million kilowatt hours worth of net metering credits, which would be about 2/3 of the district's power needs. They were only able to provide us about a quarter of that. They said that they can give us a little bit more, but it's still just about a quarter. It gets us a little closer to $500,000. I also mentioned to the group that there is another initiative out there that is to buy net metering credits off of a potential wind farm that a operation in Plymouth is looking to put on an ocean spray cranberry bog. I fully recognize that while I think many people seem to be okay with solar power, some people viscerally react to wind turbines. But in talking with various members of the committee, I felt that it was prudent to at least go forward with this and just say we would be interested in being partners. We don't know if the wind farm will ever come to be, but at least it gets us a place to potentially save more on the electric there. And then we briefly talked about starting 5-year budget projections, and Katie and I this morning met with the town managers and finance directors from Harwich and Chatham, and we're starting along that process. So if we kind of reverse gears for a second, I'd gladly let Katie come up and share with the committee some thoughts that we sort of came up with a consensus of the subcommittee, superintendent, business manager, as to what we should set fees for facilities here at the Monomoy. I believe these are in your packets, or Barbara's passing them out. So what we have on top of this sheet, the yellow band going across is what the fees currently are, and the blue band beneath that is what we would propose to have the new fees be, particularly given the facilities, primarily here at the high school, that we have to offer. That this is not the Harwich High School library anymore, Harwich High School gymnasium or auditorium, and trying to set those. So these numbers, where we went and took all of the schools on the Cape and some off Cape, along with the town of Harwich and town of Chatham's rental pricing, and tried to come up with what would make sense given the facility or field that we have. All yours, Katie.
What else I can add? No. As you can imagine, our schools are used all the time. Even before we had beautiful buildings, Howard High School was used all the time. And when we became Monomoy, we had already blended what the town, what Chatham Public Schools and what Howard Public Schools charged for the use of their buildings. And there are different categories. We have school activities, town activities, if there are nonprofit groups that want to use the buildings, or for-profit groups that want to use the building. The biggest change, of course, is this building, as well as the turf that we have, the multipurpose field. So as Scott indicated, behind all of this, we surveyed all of the districts on the Cape. We also surveyed other model schools, of which this school was designed, that it had a similar type of auditorium, and to see what is it that they charge for their rental fees. This discussion, this is just to give information and put it in front of you. We're not taking a vote on it or anything, because then there's a whole other piece of policy and the practicality of the procedures on you know, having different outside groups use the schools. So what you have, as Scott mentioned, and this is, you know, this is kind of, here's all the background of the surveys, the policies, the things that we sought from the different communities. So across the top in the yellow, highlighted in yellow, and I just have a couple more, I'm sorry. So this is draft, and we'll be talking about this again, are what we currently charge for the use of auditorium, cafeteria, the cafeteria with the kitchen, the gym, library, classrooms, computer labs, fields, parking lot. So then the blue section is saying, okay, this is what we recommend. So we're looking at, for instance, at the high school auditorium now, you know, a rate of $150 an hour for a nonprofit group and $250 an hour for a profit group coming in, with a fee for having to use 1 hour lighting people, because we have a beautiful facility, and we want to oversee the using the lighting and the audiovisual, the audio information. We know that what we need to do as well is come up with policies and practices in terms of, if you have a regular user that is going to use the building for a long period of time, just merely charging somebody an hourly rate may be prohibitive for them. So I don't know in terms of what level of detail you want me to outline these numbers here, if you just want to look at them and we talk about them at another meeting. Contractually, we have labor costs for our custodians. And there's also contractually, if somebody is using our cafeteria with the kitchen, somebody that is Serve Safe certified must be present. So our cafeteria staff needs to be present if an outside group, even if, actually that's even if an inside group is using the kitchen, we have to have a cafeteria person on staff as well. So this is really, we started with kind of putting a broad brush stroke, and then pared down and compared whether it was Nauset or Dennis Yarmouth or the theater in Barnstable, to say, what do we have in comparison to what the surrounding communities are charging, as well as the town of Howard and the town of Chatham as well. So these are the numbers that we came up with. There are surcharges for instance, we never had lights at our fields before. Our fields were used before, but now, we have the lights that we will be charging a surcharge to pay for those lights. And some of those are really up in the air right now, because we're just getting to know the costs of this building. So this is definitely a work in progress. We've received a lot of calls from a lot of different people interested in using the facility, and we've been putting people on hold just so we could come up with some numbers that are consistent. And we've addressed even the fact that over in Chatham, we have a beautiful 2 gyms at the middle school, a larger one with bleachers, a smaller gym. So we have quite a lot of beautiful spaces that people are interested in using. So I don't know if anyone has questions, if you want me to go through the pricing. I don't know exactly how you want me to proceed.
Brian?
If I may, I'd also like to address, for the public too, some of the discussions that the Finance Subcommittee had in terms of concepts that we discussed and that we wanted to apply to coming up with what we should charge people to use the facilities. There's quite a lot that goes into it, and we have a policy subcommittee that will be working on the policies for actual use of it, and they may or may not be affected by some of the financial considerations that we discussed as a subcommittee. But I thought it would be good to tell people some of the discussions we had so they could get a feel for, as this goes through the process, and they might review and say, well, why are you charging this much for this and different amounts for that? Some of the considerations that we discussed were, we talked about different facilities, different parts of the school and different facilities in the school have a different cost situation. For example, it might cost more to maintain the cafeteria than it does a classroom. So we might be more receptive to renting out classroom space, which is already being maintained by the janitorial staff without having to have overtime. We might want to price that in a way that's more attractive than, for example, some other districts. We talked about wanting to be competitive. You know, we have some facilities that are probably better than other districts might currently have, and you might say, well, then therefore we should charge a premium for the use. But the other side of that coin is we have an interest from an educational and public relations standpoint of getting the area people to understand what our school is about. So when we rent out a cafeteria to an organization, particularly if the organization is child-related, then that brings children here, it brings parents here from all over the county, gives them an idea of what the school system is about, which potentially helps our school choice numbers. So you want to structure the cost for the facility, not just the facility itself, but who's going to be using the facility. You might offer a lower price, for example, to the Boy Scouts than you would offer to an adult group along those lines. Some of the other things we discussed were if we're going to rent out space to organizations or groups that are part of the communities of Harwich and Chatham, we have to keep in mind that those people are already paying taxes to support the school. So they should perhaps have a price structure that reflects that they're already contributing versus somebody from Barnstable or Yarmouth who's not a taxpayer. We might want to charge them at a different rate. Another thing that we discussed is that we have to consider that when we use the facility, as much as we want to use it, there's the depreciation factor. When you use something, you wear it down. And we discussed the possibility of, and it's just discussion at this point, but the possibility, for example, with regard to the multipurpose field, for which I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest from other communities and other school systems. You know, everything has a lifespan, and we discussed the possibility that some of the money we receive for rentals potentially be put aside in some sort of revolving fund so that by the time that facility needs maintenance or replacement, instead of having to go back to the taxpayers and start from scratch, there'll be funds available. So there's a lot that goes into coming up with a schedule, so I would invite people who happen to be looking over our shoulders as to how we're coming up with these rates to understand that those are the thought processes that went in it. So, and of course, as we go along, be open to suggestions or questions from anybody who is concerned about these rates.
No, additional thought struck me also, and it was mentioned at the earlier subcommittee meeting that, you know, when we were kids, some of us went to Nantasket, and there was always something there. To me, it was a Ferris wheel. And all the other rides may have been secondary, but that was sort of something I'd really like to do. Or a roller coaster. And that was in your mind. Well, we've got some diamonds in the rough in this particular facility that's just brand new. The auditorium. That is not a typical high school auditorium. That is a mini-me Barnstable Performing Arts Center. And that can serve a purpose, as well as the turf field, of promoting this region, where we have parents from our district, especially if we can find groups, as Brian alluded to, in Chatham and Harwich, and they're there to make it a home, so that they're here for 3 weeks, and that's where they perform. That can be nothing but good news to the rest of the community, which will bring our kids back and make this sort of like a signature system, a school system in this Mid-Cape area. So you look at the field facility and the auditorium specifically, could very well be potential rental, not to make any money primarily, but to bring the community in here in the evenings and make that part of a community center where they have comfort of coming and going. So that was another little idea, so.
Well, I just have a quick question about this. It looks like, in general, in prior times, there was no cost to the town to rent, but there was a cost for labor. And there's some numbers missing on the now. Is that because it's not worked out, or should it just be that there's no cost to rent, but there's the labor cost for the town?
We needed to carry that custodial cost across the line, because that's an additional cost
Yes.
to the district. So we just need to carry that all the way over. Good catch, Sharon, thank you.
Any other comments, folks, on this draft? So our understanding would be that we'll mull this over in a short period of time. We'll come back to this and revisit with a vote, as well as our policy subcommittee would be invited to draft something that parallels this fee structure.
I think ideally if we could, by, at next meeting, pass the prices so that, we can start at least notifying, folks that this is what the fees are, and, for some clinics or camps that would, let's say, use the turf field, start having them put that in their business plan. That would, I think, the sooner that we could do that, the better, and definitely we get the policy group together. And I know Katie's already collected a lot of different information on policies that could be in place to clarify insurance that, that different groups need to rent the facility and so forth.